Hey everybody, welcome to the videos for my core plays for week 8 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. This is where I got my favorite 3 cash and tournament plays on the entire slate. And I also talk a little bit about price picks as well when applicable on some of these core plays, as the props get quite low on some of these guys each and every single week. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Optimizers, ownership projections, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community for NFL, NASCAR, and NBA currently. Link can be found down below. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're new signing over on Prize Picks, you get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100, so it's free money. Want to use it to your advantage when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think it'll be it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And starting us off with cash game core play number 1. It's the same guy as last week, but it's Darrell Henderson Jr., $6,500, RB1 for the LA Rams. And we liked him a lot last week. He's been chalked the prior 2 weeks, and I'm projecting him to be chalked once again. Currently projecting him to be the highest owned player on the entire slate, let alone at the running back position. But if you liked him last week, there's no reason you should not like him again this weekend. I know he didn't work out last week, 9.4 fantasy points, but he still had 21 total opportunities last weekend. That's fantastic volume for a guy that's only $6,500 on a top-tier offense like the LA Rams. He's a massive favorite. He pretty much checks every single box besides being a home favorite running back. He's just an away favorite running back. But about 2 touchdown favorite here against the Houston Texans. 30.75 implied team total. He's averaging 16 carries per game, close to 4 targets per game. So right at there is 20 total opportunities on average per game so far. And the Houston defense has been terrible versus the run this season. They're 30th DVOA, and that's kind of right on par with what they were last season. They were terrible versus running backs, allowing 26.1 fantasy points per game, which is 22nd, and close to 130 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown per game as well. And he's using the passing game, about 11% target share this season. It's just really hard to pass up Henderson once again. It just fits nicely into your lineups. And if you're spending up other positions this weekend, going mid-range to running back, I think makes plenty of sense. And really balanced builds overall seems the best way to go in cash games this week. And Henderson is about as balanced as it gets at $6,500. So checking every single box for me. I'm going to lock and load him up once again. I will say I'm not in love with this prop on Price Picks this weekend. It's kind of juiced out at 80.5 because the prior couple weeks we've been sitting in the mid-70s. Now 80.5, I'm a little scared Sonny Michel gets some damage at the end of the game if they are leading by quite a bit. That's a little bit of a concern, but just throwing that out there for those of you who are interested. And moving on to cash game core play number 2, we have Chris Godwin at $6,400. And this is looking pretty similar to last week because these are the 2 guys I talked up the most. And it's pretty much the same situation once again because no AB for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's going to be out. Rob Gronkowski will be back this week, so I guess that maybe bumps him down a little bit, but his price didn't change too much. And the way this Buccaneers offense is playing, especially Tom Brady, there's no reason that all these pass-catching options to be so cheap each and every single week. Like, even when AB's playing, him, Godwin, and Evans are all just way too cheap, and Tom Brady's really not that expensive either, and they just keep blowing up every single week. And when you take AB out of the equation, just concentrates the targets more so on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Both guys had fantastic games last week. Mike Evans had 3 touchdowns. Chris Godwin got tackled at the 1 or 2 yard line, slid over 100 yards because of 30 fantasy points. And Mike Evans is going to be glued right on Marshawn Lattimore, and they have a history, and it's not a good one for Mike Evans. He historically struggles versus the Saints, especially Marshawn Lattimore. He's averaging in 11 games, he's averaging 50 receiving yards per game. So Chris Godwin will see the softer coverage here, and he's kind of like the safety valve for Tom Brady, but can still make splash plays. And $6,400 is way too cheap. He saw 11 targets last week, caught 8 balls, 111 yards. Did find himself into the end zone. I would not be surprised if we see a similar performance once again. This should be a pretty high-scoring game. 50-point over-under, which is one of the highest in the entire week. 27.5 implied team total here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it's only a 5-point spread, so hopefully it stays close so there's no blowout. But when you take a guy like AB out of the field, over 8 targets per game, close to a 20% target share, just opens up a lot more room for guys like Evans and Godwin to crush their price tags. And even though the Saints are 68 versus the pass this season, they're still ranked 20th versus wide receivers. And Godwin's projecting as one of the best point per dollar options on the entire slate at the position. And I'm currently projecting him to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate as well. Because $6,400 is just way too cheap for guys as talented as him. And in a great situation on this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. And unfortunately for us, last week when AB got ruled out, we could get Chris Godwin over a 60.5 receiving yards prop, which is absolutely insane because on DK, it was close to 80 yards. Unfortunately, it's now at 74.5, so they did not give us the value that they did last week, which is a total mistake. That was one of the easiest overs I've honestly seen on Price Picks. I still think you can hit the over at 74.5, but it's definitely not as appealing as it was last week, but I still wouldn't mind going over on that. And moving on to our third and final cash game core play. I don't usually put quarterbacks on here, but it's a special occasion this week because I just think Jalen Hurts is easily the best play to go in cash games at the quarterback position this weekend. Yes, there's guys like Tom Brady, Josh Allen. You can play them in tournaments, but for cash games this weekend, I'm just going to plug in the guy who gets the job done each and every single week. I'm not saying he's a great real-life quarterback, but for fantasy purposes, the floor has been amazing for him this season. Just simply looking at the game log, he scored 24, 26, 23, 31, 25, and 21, 28 fantasy points. So his worst game so far this year was 21 fantasy points, where he had 190 passing yards and 0 passing touchdowns. The thing that's getting him there and saving him each and every single week is that rushing floor that he offers you each and every single week. And it gives you a nice floor and a nice ceiling as well, averaging 51 rushing yards per game, nearly a rushing touchdown per game. And this matchup versus Detroit is about as good as it gets. They're one of the worst defenses in football so far this season versus the pass. They're 27th DVOA and 21st in points allowed per game to the quarterback position. And also versus the run, they're 21st DVOA and 28th versus running backs. And Jalen Hurts pretty much going to be the RB1 of this offense, especially with no Miles Sanders. So hard not to like Jalen Hurts. His pass catching options are quite cheap to pair up with him in Dallas Goedert and DeVonta Smith. And while it might not be pretty, Jalen Hurts just seems to get there each and every single weekend. And I have a hard time betting against him in this matchup versus Detroit on the road. And he actually does have a pretty interesting prop over on Price Picks this weekend. He's sitting at 42.5 for his rushing yards total. On the DK Sportsbook, it's sitting at 46.5. He's actually gone over that 42.5 prop in 5 out of 7 games so far this season as well. Moving on to GPP core play number 1, we have the man who's always here in this position, but hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. DeAndre Swift, $7,100. I think you can play him in cash games. He's currently in my shell boat as of right now, but I think you could go either way because the way he's utilized, it kind of makes him more GPP-ish because he doesn't get that much volume on the ground, but hard to pass up the volume he's getting in the passing game. And if you're stacking the Eagles, DeAndre Swift is your best run back option on the Detroit Lions. Like, he has been crushing it all season long. He does have a couple bad games mixed in there, but for the most part, he's actually been relatively consistent. This matchup versus the Eagles is actually very darn good. They've really struggled versus the running back so far this season. 29th DVA versus the run, and allowing the 3rd most points per game to the position. They're also struggling through the air as well, which is DeAndre Swift's bread and butter, allowing 7 catches and 50 receiving yards per game just to running backs. So DeAndre Swift's kind of in the perfect spot here, over a 20% target share at the running back position. That's more than Najee Harris. We know how involved Najee Harris is in the passing game so far this year. 6 catches per game, 55.86 receiving yards, and kind of averaging around 10 to 13 carries per game. So you're pretty much getting RB2 and wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 numbers out of DeAndre Swift at $7,100. So really hard to pass him up. Loving him pretty much everywhere, cash games or tournaments. His prop on Prize Picks is a bit juiced up this week. Last week he was only at 33.5, which was insanely so low. And he hit that in the first drive when he housed that 63-yard receiving touchdown. But he's at 47.5 right now. I still wouldn't be surprised if he hits the over there. It means averaging more yards than that per game. But just back to DFS purposes, I know the price is coming up. He's been around that low $6,000 range. So $7,100 is a bit of a steep price point, but he's projecting as one of the best running backs in the entire slate. He's actually top 5 in projected points for me. So $7,100, he's still getting as a good point per dollar option. And moving on to GPP core play number 2 is the same guy as last week. A lot of overlap from last weekend, but I don't know. They just found themselves in similar spots, and the prices really aren't too far off. So no reason not to like them once again. But AJ Brown here, $6,900. No Julio Jones confirmed this weekend. So AJ Brown is your clear-cut wide receiver 1 in this offense, even though he already was, but no Julio. I mean, he's just even more the man now. 9 targets the past 2 weeks, 7 and 8 catches. 30 fantasy points last week versus KC, 16 versus Buffalo, but that was a tougher matchup. But he gets a great spot here versus the Indianapolis Colts. And with people always playing Derrick Henry, AJ Brown tends to get a little bit lower owned than he should. I'm not projecting him to be super low owned this weekend, but I still think he's going to be lower owned to a point where he's going to be a good tournament play because he's kind of priced in between some guys that will carry some heavy ownership. Guys like Calvin Ridley, Chris Godwin in that 6K range right beside him will be higher owned than AJ Brown, more than likely. And then right in the 7K range, you have Jamar Chase, who's definitely going to carry some ownership. Then you have Mike Evans, DJ Moore, who obviously people are going to play, as well as Deebo Samuel. So AJ Brown won't be too chalky. He'll probably be right in the middle there, but I don't mind being overweight on him because this is a great matchup versus the Colts. They haven't really shown that they can stop good wide receivers so far this season. They ranked 22nd DVA versus the pass and 24th versus wide receivers, allowing over 1.5 receiving touchdowns per game. On the season, AJ Brown's got a 25% target share and a 40% market share of the team's air yards, and this should relatively be a pretty high-scoring game. 50.5 point over-under. It's only a 1-point spread, should be back and forth, and I think AJ Brown's an excellent play. And I like Jonathan Taylor a lot this week, and if you want to use Jonathan Taylor, AJ Brown's not a bad run back option to correlate your lineups well. And his prop on Prize Picks is sitting at 76.5 yards, which he has gone over the past couple of weekends. And our third and final GPP core play of the week, we have wide receiver 1 for the Philadelphia Eagles, DeVonta Smith at $5,500. I like Jalen Hurts a lot this weekend. I'm personally planning on playing him naked in cash games this weekend, but in tournaments, I want to get some pairing options with him. And for me, it's either DeVonta Smith or Dallas Goedert. But I love DeVonta Smith here at the wide receiver position, mainly because his price range, he is priced right by guys who are going to be two of the highest owned at the position this weekend. T. Higgins at $5,200, he's going to be massive chalk versus the Jets. And Michael Pittman at $5,300 will be massive chalk versus the Tennessee Titans. But DeVonta Smith, not everyone's going to go straight 3-5K wide receivers. I think people are going to jam in a guy like Chris Godwin or whoever it may be as the other guy. So I'm hoping Smith goes a little bit lower owned. I'm not projecting him, similar to A.J. Brown, to be super low owned this weekend. But compared to Michael Pittman and T. Higgins, he will be lower owned. So I think he's a good pivot off of those guys in tournaments and cash games. I would much rather go that route. But in tournaments, I think Smith is a very solid option here. He gets a great matchup versus Detroit. Smith's been very involved in the offense. It's just he's been a bit hit or miss this season. Obviously, Jalen Hurts, not the most consistent quarterback out there when it comes to getting his wide receivers the ball, but he's got about a 40% market share of the team's air yards this season, close to 7.5 targets per game, 23% target share. You know the upside that DeVonta Smith has. This is a very bad secondary, 27th DVA versus the pass and 23rd versus wide receivers, allowing nearly 200 receiving yards per game to the position. So Jalen Hurts to DeVonta Smith could definitely be dangerous on this slate. And you're really not breaking the bank here either. And with that being said, I think it'll be pretty much it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to take that one step further, become a official member over on Patreon. You'll find it. Link can be found down below. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks. Just you versus the projections. And as of right now, if you use sign over there, you get a free money bonus up to $100 and use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But I think that'll be it. I will stop rambling. I wish you guys the best of luck on Sunday and enjoy your day.